Commander Vex Nora of the Galactic Council's Xenobiology Division had seen many things during her 40 cycles of service. She had witnessed the crystalline hive minds of Andromeda Prime, documented the plasma-breathing dragons of Kepler 442b, and even survived a close encounter with the dreaded shadow wraiths of the Void Nebula. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for the utter absurdity of watching three humans argue about who would win in a fight between a grizzly bear and a tiger. "Look, I'm telling you, Marcus," said the female human designated as Captain Elena Vasquez, her dark eyes gleaming with what Vex Nora's scanners identified as competitive enthusiasm. "A Siberian tiger weighs 600 pounds of pure muscle and has claws that can slice through bone like butter. Your grizzly doesn't stand a chance." The male human, Marcus Webb, laughed so hard that his whole body shook, causing the gravitational sensors in the room to register minor fluctuations. "Elena, you're forgetting one crucial detail. Grizzlies are tanks with attitude problems. They've been known to survive gunshots and keep charging. A tiger might be fast, but when that bear gets its paws on it, game over." The third human, Dr. Lila Knox, adjusted her wire-rimmed spectacles and interjected with the kind of academic precision that made Vex Nora's antennae twitch. "Actually, you're both overlooking the environmental factors. In water, the tiger has the advantage. On land, it depends on terrain. Rocky terrain favors the bear, while dense forest gives the edge to the tiger." Vex Nora's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of extreme confusion among her species. She had called this meeting to discuss the humans' integration into the Galactic Defense Protocol, not to witness what appeared to be the most passionate debate about fictional combat scenarios she had ever encountered. The Xanthari commander cleared her throat, producing a sound like wind chimes caught in a hurricane. "Esteemed humans, perhaps we could focus on the matter at hand. The Council needs to determine Earth's defensive capabilities before we can approve your species for full membership." Captain Vasquez waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, we'll get to that, Commander. But first, we need to settle this. Marcus thinks terrestrial predators are the ultimate fighters, but he's clearly never seen a saltwater crocodile in action." "Now hold on," Webb interjected, raising both hands like he was surrendering to an invisible enemy. "I never said terrestrial predators are the ultimate fighters. I said they're the most adaptable. There's a difference." Dr. Knox pushed her glasses up her nose, a gesture Vex Nora had learned indicated impending intellectual warfare among humans. "Adaptability doesn't equal fighting prowess, Marcus. If we're talking pure predatory efficiency, you have to consider the orca, apex predator of the oceans, hunting strategies that border on genius, and they've never lost a prey item they've decided to target." Vex Nora's translator implant began smoking slightly. In her extensive database of known species, she had catalogued over 47,000 different forms of intelligent life, and not one of them had ever spent this much time discussing hypothetical animal combat. The Krelian Empire conquered galaxies with less strategic planning than these humans were dedicating to bear versus tiger scenarios. "Commander," she said, her voice carrying the kind of patience usually reserved for explaining quantum mechanics to primitive civilizations, "while your passion for your planet's fauna is noted, we really must discuss your species' military capabilities." Elena Vasquez turned to face the alien commander, and Vex Nora immediately noticed the shift in the human's demeanor. The playful arguing had been replaced by something else entirely. Something that made the temperature sensors in the room register a sudden drop. "Military capabilities?" Elena repeated, her voice carrying an odd tone that Vex Nora's translator struggled to identify. "Commander, With all due respect, we've been discussing military capabilities this entire time." Marcus Webb nodded slowly, and Dr. Knox removed her glasses to clean them with the kind of deliberate precision that suggested she was buying time to choose her words carefully. "I'm afraid I don't understand," Vexnora said, her antennae drooping slightly. "You have been debating the combat effectiveness of your planet's wildlife. How does this relate to your species' defensive capacity?" The three humans exchanged glances, and Vexnora's threat assessment scanners registered a subtle but unmistakable shift in the room's atmosphere. It was the kind of change that preceded either laughter or violence, and given humanity's reputation, either option was equally likely. Elena leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Commander Vexnora, may I ask you something? When you've been cataloging predatory species across the galaxy, have you been counting trained ones or wild ones?" The question hung in the air like a plasma grenade with a faulty timer. Vexnora's processing centers worked overtime, trying to parse the implications of what the human female had just asked. What do you mean by trained ones?" she asked, though something in her core systems was already beginning to sound alarm bells. Dr. Knox cleared her throat. "Well, Commander, when we were discussing bears and tigers and crocodiles, we were talking about wild specimens, animals that live their entire lives without any human intervention or guidance." Marcus Webb picked up the thread with the kind of casual tone one might use to discuss the weather. "But you see, humans have this interesting habit. We take these apex predators and we make them better." Vexnora's scanner array began working overtime. "Better? How do you make an apex predator?" "Better." Elena's smile widened, and for the first time since entering this room, Vexnora understood why the Galactic Council's preliminary reports on humanity had been flagged with 17 different warning classifications. "Commander," Elena said, her voice carrying the kind of cheerful menace that made seasoned warriors reconsider their career choices, "have you ever heard of something called a war dog?" The Zentari commander's four eyes widened simultaneously. "War dog? Oh, that's just the beginning," Dr. Knox said, consulting a data pad with the casual efficiency of someone reading a grocery list. "We've got war horses, war elephants, war dolphins, war eagles. We even had war pigeons during one of our global conflicts." "War pigeons?" Vexnora repeated, her voice climbing several octaves. Marcus Webb chuckled. "Carrier pigeons, Commander. We strapped cameras to them and sent them over enemy territory for reconnaissance. Turns out, when you need reliable intelligence gathering, sometimes the best technology is a bird that really wants to get home to its mate." The room's environmental controls registered a sudden spike in Vexnora's body temperature as her species' equivalent of adrenaline flooded her system. You domesticate your apex predators and turn them into weapons?" "Domesticate is such a harsh word," Elena said, waving a hand dismissively. "We prefer partnership. Take attack dogs, for instance. A German Shepherd in the wild is already a formidable predator. But train it from birth to work with human handlers, teach it tactical awareness, condition it for combat situations, and you've got something that's exponentially more dangerous than its wild counterpart." Dr. Knox nodded approvingly. The symbiotic relationship enhances both species' capabilities. The dog gains human intelligence and strategic thinking, while the human gains enhanced senses, speed, and instinctive threat assessment. Vexnora's antennae began trembling, an involuntary response her species exhibited when processing information that challenged their fundamental understanding of reality. But surely this is limited to smaller creatures. You cannot possibly have weaponized your planet's larger predators. The three humans exchanged another series of glances, and this time Vex Nora's threat assessment systems began flashing warnings in 17 different languages. "Commander," Marcus said slowly, "have you ever heard of something called cavalry?" "Cavalry?" "Humans on horseback," Elena explained. "Now, horses aren't predators in the traditional sense, but they're 1,000 pounds of muscle and bone that can run at 40 miles per hour. Put an armed human on top of that, and you've essentially created a mobile weapons platform with independent threat assessment capabilities." Dr. Knox pulled up a holographic display from her datapad. "But horses are just the beginning. Throughout human history, we've used elephants as living tanks. These creatures weigh 6 tons and have enough intelligence to follow complex battle strategies." Vex Nora stared at the hologram of a massive gray creature with what appeared to be a heavily armed human sitting on its back. "This creature, it follows your commands." "Absolutely," Marcus replied. "And that's not even getting into the really creative applications. We've trained dolphins for underwater reconnaissance and sabotage missions. They can navigate enemy waters, plant explosives on ship hulls, and disappear before anyone knows they were there." The Zenthari commander's mind reeled. In all her cycles of studying different species' military capabilities, she had never encountered anything like this. Most civilizations developed technology to overcome their physical limitations. Humans, apparently, had decided to recruit their planet's most dangerous creatures as allies. "But surely," she said, grasping for some semblance of logic, "these are historical examples. Your modern military doesn't actually employ animal combatants." Elena's grin took on a distinctly predatory quality. "Oh, Commander, we're just getting started. You want to talk about modern applications? Let's discuss military working dogs in contemporary warfare." Dr. Knox manipulated her holographic display, showing images that made Vex Nora's threat sensors scream warnings. Belgian Malinois trained for special operations. These dogs can parachute from aircraft, conduct underwater operations, and detect threats that human technology might miss. They're equipped with night vision goggles, body armor, and communication systems. "Communication systems?" Vex Nora's voice was barely a whisper. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "Two-way radio communication between the dog and its handler. The dog becomes a mobile sensor platform with independent decision-making capabilities. It can advance into hostile territory, assess threats, and relay real-time intelligence back to human commanders." The room fell silent, except for the gentle hum of the environmental systems and the increasingly frantic beeping of Vex Nora's biological monitors. She had come to this meeting expecting to evaluate a species' defensive capabilities based on technology, tactics, and raw military power. Instead, she was discovering that humans had essentially turned their entire planet into a recruitment center for biological warfare specialists. "Commander?" Elena asked, her tone carrying what might have been genuine concern. "You look a little pale." "Well, paler than usual." Vex Nora struggled to process the implications of what she was learning. "Let me understand this correctly. Your species has spent millennia forming military alliances with your planet's most dangerous creatures, enhancing their natural capabilities through training and technology, and deploying them as integrated components of your warfare systems." "That's actually a pretty accurate summary," Dr. Knox said, looking impressed. "Though you're still missing some of the more exotic applications." "More exotic applications?" Vex Nora repeated, her voice cracking slightly. Marcus leaned forward with the enthusiasm of someone sharing their favorite hobby. Ever heard of attack geese? Attack geese. Geese are naturally territorial and aggressive, Elena explained, but they're also incredibly intelligent and can be trained to recognize specific threats. During certain historical periods, we've used them as living alarm systems and even as direct combatants in specific scenarios. Vexnora's antennae had stopped trembling and had gone completely rigid, a sign of psychological overload among her species. You turned waterfowl into weapons? Commander, I think you're missing the bigger picture here, Dr. Knox said gently. We haven't just weaponized individual species. We've created an entire philosophy of warfare based on biological symbiosis. Humans don't just use tools, we form partnerships. With creatures that most species would consider too dangerous to approach, we've built relationships based on mutual benefit and shared objectives. The Zenthari commander stared at the three humans, her 4 eyes focusing and unfocusing as she tried to process this information. In her extensive military database, she had files on energy weapons, kinetic bombardment systems, plasma cannons, and antimatter warheads. But nowhere in her 40 cycles of experience had she ever encountered a species that had essentially convinced their planet's apex predators to join their military. This is, she began, then stopped. This is unprecedented. In all of galactic history, no species has ever developed this kind of relationship with their planet's dangerous fauna. Elena shrugged with the casual indifference of someone discussing the weather. Well, Commander, we've always been pretty good at making friends with things that could kill us. It's kind of our specialty. The meeting room's silence was broken by the soft chiming of Vexnora's communication device. She glanced at the display, noting an incoming priority message from the Galactic Council's Threat Assessment Division. The timing was suspicious, to say the least. "Excuse me for a moment," she said, activating the holographic display. The image of High Admiral Keth Moore, head of the Council's military division, materialized above the conference table. "Commander Vexnora," the Admiral's voice carried the kind of urgency usually reserved for system-wide emergencies. "We need an immediate update on your assessment of human military capabilities. We've received some disturbing reports from other sectors." Vexnora glanced at the 3 humans, who were watching the conversation with expressions of polite interest. "What kind of reports, Admiral?" "Intelligence suggests that humans have been recruiting various species for military purposes. Our sources indicate they've formed some kind of alliance with creatures called attack dolphins and war elephants. The Galactic Security Committee is requesting immediate clarification." Elena cleared her throat politely. "Admiral, if I may?" "Commander Vexnora was just asking us about our defensive capabilities. We've been having a fascinating discussion about predator hierarchies." High Admiral Keth Moore's holographic image turned toward the human captain, and Vexnora noticed that the Admiral's usual composed expression had been replaced by something approaching panic. "Captain Vasquez, is it true that your species has weaponized your planet's apex predators?" Elena exchanged glances with her companions, and Vexnora recognized the look that passed between them. It was the same expression she had seen on the faces of seasoned warriors when they realized their opponents had vastly underestimated their capabilities. "Admiral," Elena said, her voice taking on the tone of someone explaining something to a child, "we've been trying to tell Commander Vexnora that we haven't weaponized our apex predators. That would be cruel and unnecessary." The Admiral's relief was visible even through the holographic projection. "Then the reports are incorrect?" Elena's smile returned. and this time it carried enough menace to make Vexnora's scanner array register a combat alert. "Oh no, Admiral. The reports are probably accurate. We just haven't weaponized our apex predators." She paused, and the silence that followed was the kind that preceded either brilliant revelations or catastrophic explosions. "We've made them our partners." High Admiral Kethmore's holographic form flickered slightly, a sure sign that his stress levels were overwhelming his projection stabilizers. "Partners? What exactly do you mean by partners?" Dr. Knox stepped forward, her academic demeanor replaced by something far more serious. "Admiral, when most species encounter a dangerous predator, they either flee or attempt to destroy it. Humans took a different approach. We asked ourselves a simple question: what if we could convince it to work with us instead?" Marcus Webb pulled up his own data display, showing what appeared to be a massive black-and-white marine creature. Take orcas, for example, killer whales, apex predators of Earth's oceans, with intelligence levels that rival some sentient species. Instead of viewing them as threats, we studied them, learned their communication patterns, and discovered they were already using sophisticated hunting strategies. "And then?" Vexnora asked, though she was beginning to suspect she didn't want to know the answer. "Then we made contact," Elena said simply. "Turns out, orcas are natural tacticians. They hunt in coordinated pods, use complex strategies, and can adapt their approach based on their prey's behavior. So, we started working with them." The Admiral's projection turned several shades darker, the Krillian equivalent of blood draining from one's face. "Working with them, how?" Elena's expression became unnervingly casual. "Naval reconnaissance, mostly. Underwater threat assessment. Anti-submarine warfare. You'd be amazed how effective a pod of killer whales can be at detecting and neutralizing enemy vessels." Vexnora's threat assessment systems had given up trying to categorize the danger levels and had simply started displaying error messages. "You have aquatic mammals conducting military operations for you." "With us," Marcus corrected. "Not for us. That's the crucial distinction, Commander. These aren't enslaved creatures following orders. They're intelligent beings who've chosen to work alongside humans because the partnership benefits both species." Dr. Knox manipulated her holographic display, showing what appeared to be a creature with massive tusks and thick gray skin. Consider the African elephant. Average weight, 6 tons. Intelligence level, problem-solving capabilities that exceed many technological species. Natural armor that can deflect small arms fire. And they live in highly organized social structures with established command hierarchies. Please tell me you haven't militarized 6-ton creatures with natural armor, Admiral Kethmore said, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Militarized is such an ugly word," Elena replied. "We prefer recruited." And yes, elephants have been human military allies for over 2,000 years. They serve as mobile command centers, heavy assault platforms, and logistical support units. Vexnora's antennae had begun twitching again, but this time it wasn't confusion. It was the kind of involuntary response her species exhibited when their survival instincts were screaming warnings. 2,000 years? You've been doing this for 2,000 years? Marcus nodded enthusiastically. Oh, much longer than that, actually. We've been forming military partnerships with various species for most of our recorded history. Dogs have been fighting alongside humans for over 15,000 years. 15,000 years, the Admiral repeated slowly. You've had a standing military alliance with another species for 15,000 years. Multiple species, Dr. Knox corrected. And the alliances have been evolving. Modern military working dogs aren't just companions anymore. They're integrated into our technological systems. Night vision, communication arrays, GPS tracking, real-time health monitoring. We've essentially created cybernetically enhanced predators. The room fell silent except for the increasingly frantic beeping of various alien monitoring systems. Vexnora stared at the humans, trying to process the implications of what she was hearing. Every species in the galaxy had developed warfare around technology, tactics, and superior firepower. Humans had apparently spent millennia building an army of volunteers from their planet's most dangerous creatures. "Commander," Admiral Kethmore said, his voice carrying the kind of strain usually associated with imminent system failures, "we need a complete assessment of human military capabilities. The Council is convening an emergency session, and they need to know exactly what we're dealing with." Elena looked at her companions, and some silent communication passed between them. "Admiral, how much time do we have?" "Time for what?" "To explain the rest of it." The Admiral's projection flickered more violently. "The rest of what?" Dr. Knox cleared her throat. "Well, we've covered terrestrial and aquatic partnerships, but we haven't discussed aerial capabilities yet." Vexnora's scanner array registered what her species' medical database classified as an impending psychological breakdown. "Aerial capabilities?" Marcus grinned with the expression of someone about to deliver a particularly effective punchline. "Ever heard of falconry, Commander?" "Falconry?" "The art of training birds of prey to hunt in partnership with humans," Elena explained. "Humans have been working with raptors for over 4,000 years. Hawks, eagles, falcons, owls, creatures with eyesight that surpasses most technological surveillance systems and flight capabilities that make them nearly impossible to detect or intercept." The Admiral's hologram was now flickering so badly that he looked like a malfunctioning piece of equipment. "You've weaponized flying predators?" "Again with the weaponization," Elena said, shaking her head. "Admiral, these birds aren't weapons. They're reconnaissance specialists, communication relay systems, and precision strike capabilities all rolled into one biological package." Dr. Knox pulled up images of various flying creatures with sharp beaks and intense eyes. A peregrine falcon can reach speeds of over 200 miles per hour in a hunting dive. Golden eagles can carry prey weighing up to 15 pounds while maintaining flight. And they can be trained to operate in coordination with human tactical units. Vexnora's mind was reeling. "You have flying attack units?" "We have aerial reconnaissance partners," Marcus corrected. "Though, admittedly, a golden eagle equipped with modern surveillance technology and trained for military operations is, well, let's just say enemy combatants tend to have a very bad day when they encounter one." The Zenthari commander looked around the room, her 4 eyes darting between the 3 humans and the increasingly distressed hologram of the Admiral. "How many species have you recruited for military service?" Elena shrugged. "That's actually a complicated question, Commander. Are we talking about direct military applications, or are we including support roles?" "Support roles?" Dr. Knox consulted her datapad. "Carrier pigeons for communication, pack animals for logistics, guard geese for perimeter security, tracker dogs for search and rescue, detection animals for explosive and narcotic identification. The list gets quite extensive when you include all the specialized applications." Admiral Kethmore's projection stabilized slightly, though his expression suggested he was operating on emergency power. "Specialized applications?" Marcus's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of someone discussing their favorite hobby. "Oh, this is where it gets really interesting." We've got bomb-sniffing dogs that can detect explosives at concentrations too low for most technological sensors. We've got tracker dogs that can follow scent trails that are weeks old. We've got search and rescue dogs that can locate survivors in conditions where human searchers would be completely ineffective. And then there are the marine mammals, Elena added. Dolphins and sea lions trained for underwater operations. They can dive deeper than human divers, navigate in zero-visibility conditions, and detect threats that sonar systems might miss. Vex Nora's processing centers had apparently given up trying to maintain rational analysis and had switched to some kind of emergency survival mode. You have aquatic reconnaissance teams composed of marine mammals. Among other things, Dr. Knox said, sea lions can be trained for underwater recovery operations. They're incredibly intelligent, naturally adapted for aquatic environments, and they can operate in conditions that would be lethal for human divers. The Admiral's hologram flickered again, and when it stabilized, his expression had moved beyond panic into something approaching existential horror. Commander Vex Nora, I need you to ask them a direct question. How many creatures are we talking about here? How large is this biological military force? Elena looked at her companions, and once again that silent communication passed between them. This time, however, Vex Nora's enhanced sensors detected something new in their expressions. Not pride or amusement, but something that looked almost like pity. Admiral, Elena said slowly, you're asking the wrong question. What do you mean? Dr. Knox removed her glasses and cleaned them again, that same deliberate gesture that Vex Nora now recognized as a warning sign. You're asking how many creatures we've recruited for military service, but that assumes we've been selective in our recruitment process. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his casual posture at odds with the increasingly tense atmosphere in the room. The truth is, Admiral, we haven't been recruiting specific creatures for military applications. We've been developing military applications for every creature we encounter. The room fell silent. Even the environmental system seemed to have quieted, as if the entire space station was holding its breath. Every creature, Vex Nora whispered. Elena nodded. Commander, humans don't see a dangerous predator and think, how do we defend against this? We see a dangerous predator and think, how do we convince this to work with us? It's not just a military strategy. It's how we approach everything. The Admiral's projection was now flickering so violently that his words came through in broken fragments. Are you telling me that your entire planet is essentially a military recruitment center? Dr. Knox consulted her datapad one final time. Admiral, Earth has approximately 8.7 million known species. Humans have formed working relationships with several thousand of them, and we're constantly developing new applications for biological partnerships. Marcus grinned. Plus, we're really good at adapting our tactics. You know how most species develop standard military procedures and stick with them? Humans work with creatures that force us to constantly innovate. Every dog has a different personality. Every horse has different strengths. Every bird of prey requires a unique approach. Elena stood up, her movement causing every threat sensor in the room to register heightened alert status. What this means, Admiral, is that humans don't just have biological allies. We have an entire planet full of military advisors, each with millions of years of evolutionary experience in survival, hunting, and combat tactics. Vex Nora stared at the three humans, her mind finally processing the full scope of what she was hearing. These weren't just warriors with animal companions. They were representatives of a species that had turned biological diversity into military advantage, that had transformed their planet's entire ecosystem into a comprehensive defense network. "Commander," Admiral Keth Moore said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had just realized the fundamental assumptions underlying galactic civilization might be completely wrong. "What is your assessment of human military capabilities?" Vex Nora looked at Elena, Marcus, and Dr. Knox. They stood there waiting for her response, three representatives of a species that had somehow convinced their planet's apex predators to become willing allies, that had turned biological evolution into military strategy, and that had been doing it for thousands of years. "Admiral," she said slowly, "I believe we need to reconsider our entire approach to evaluating military threats." Elena smiled, and for the first time since this conversation began, it was a genuinely warm expression, rather than a predatory one. "Commander, humans have a saying, if you can't beat them, join them. But we've always preferred the inverse approach." "Which is," Marcus chuckled, "if you can't join them, convince them to join you." Dr. Knox closed her datapad with a soft click. "Admiral, Commander, the truth is that humans didn't develop superior military technology or tactics. We developed superior recruiting strategies." The Admiral's projection stabilized one final time. "And what exactly are you recruiting for?" Elena's warm smile took on just the slightest edge. "Admiral, we're not recruiting for anything. We're recruiting everyone. That's been our approach from the beginning. We look at every creature, every species, every form of life we encounter, and we ask ourselves one simple question. Which is..." Elena, Marcus, and Dr. Knox spoke in unison, their voices carrying the kind of casual confidence that made Vex Nora's survival instincts scream warnings. "How do we make friends with this?" The holographic projection of Admiral Keth Moore flickered one final time and then disappeared entirely, leaving the four beings alone in the conference room. The silence stretched for several long moments before Vex Nora finally spoke. "Humans," she said slowly, "are terrifying." Elena laughed, a sound like wind chimes mixed with controlled explosions. "Commander, we prefer enthusiastically collaborative. But thank you for the compliment." And somewhere in the depths of space, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss whether humanity represented the greatest military threat they had ever encountered, or the most valuable allies they could possibly recruit. The debate would continue for months. The answer, as humans had learned long ago, was probably both.